Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today on Too Young, Too Old, Just Right, our dive-in event. Right, we're kick-starting with this specific topic in ageism. So I hope everyone enjoys being here today. So before that, we have to run through some administrative matters. So firstly, emergency exits. They are just out this way, behind the door over there. So, and as well as in front. So just follow the exit signs, right? And a disclaimer, since you are here for this diving event, your photographs will be taken, there'll be videos, right? So if you do not want your images to be online or with us, then please do inform our team, right? They're just sitting on the left and at the back. So yes, that's all for administrative matters. So we'll move on to the next slide. Is there? Oh, okay. Right. Oh, yes, clicker. Okay, yes. So agenda, sorry, missed out on the clicker, everyone. So agenda for today, registration opening. We'll do some icebreaker, interactive Slido so that the virtual participants can participate as well. Right. Then we go on to the panel discussion. We have our 3 prestigious speakers with us today. Then afterwards, we'll move on to intergenerational café. It's an event. I'll let you guys know the details later. Closing, and then we'll move on to networking and lunch, which I'm already hungry, so I can't wait to get to that part. So I understand that I'll have to run through the objectives for the dive-in because some people are here today because they would like to take this event as part of their CII, CPD accreditation as part of their module. So I have to run through this just as an administrative matter as well. So out of all the objectives for the dive-in event, we've covered 5. Unfortunately, we can't cover the last one, attracting new talent to our industry, because this event is purely for our industry. So, but if there are any graduates online, welcome, right? Please join us in insurance. But yes, so we'll be covering all 5 of these objectives, increasing awareness of diversity, connecting talents from the young to the old, high attendance and active participation. I hope there's high attendance live right now, right? And enable diving participants to take part in a year-round action. So we'll be opening mentorship opportunities later. So if you'd like to be a mentor or mentee, please fill in the feedback form later so that we might connect you with others. So lastly, to bolster the reputation of the insurance as an industry. Hopefully I will be doing a good job in that today. So yes, so just to cover the objectives so that this is CII accredited. So okay, moving on, next. Let's go on to interactive Slido. So can I have everyone pull out your phones, right? Your tablets, anything, right? And we'll go on to this, an active poll, including the online audience as well. Hi. Please join us in taking this poll. So have you or someone you ever been told, I'm sorry, but you're too young or too old for this position? Our tagline. Give everyone 30 seconds. Go through the poll. All good? Yeah, I see someone still doing QR code. Okay, take your time. You can also join us at slido.com if the QR code doesn't work, and you just have to key in those the pin 1151483. Okay. I think most of everyone has participated in this poll. So let's move on. No. Yes. Oh, 50-50. Okay, no, not really 50-50. 55% to 46%, 54. Oh, it's still changing. All right. So half of you have been told that you are too young or too old for a particular position. I don't know, it could be a senior position, a leadership position, right? So I hope to hear more from you later. Next, you're recruiting for a role that requires tech savvy and fast pace as part of a change workshop. You have a CV with an email that ends in @fishpond.com. What would you do? You accept it? You reject it? On what basis? What would you do? Okay, another 30 seconds. All right, I think I see everyone's heads up. I think most of everyone's done. Okay, what's it? Let's set up an interview to assess their adaptability and ability to work the fast-paced environment. Wow, you guys are really nice. Right? All right, but I can see there's still, 10%, 90% to reject the candidate because of the email domain, or email domain seems outdated and not sure if you should proceed. So there's at least 20% of you who would reject, which is lower than I expected, right? So, all right. So, but that's just an icebreaker for this session in ageism. So for now, I'll just invite our three panelists up, right? And we'll move on to our panel discussion, right? Thank you so much. Please. Today we only have two mics with us, so bear with us as we pass around the mic. So before that, I'd like to introduce myself as well as the speakers. So I am Elsabella Wong. I'm from Beasley. I am a political violence and deadly weapons protection underwriter, assistant underwriter, right? Hopefully one day underwriter. All right, so we move on. So I'll introduce Jeanette first. So Jeanette Lim is the regional head of agency development and incentives with CHUB, Asia Pacific, and in her capacity today as the president of Singapore Insurance Institute, SII, which serves as the institute to promote professional excellence in insurance and financial services in Singapore. So that's Jeanette. Thank you so much for joining us today. So Mr. Chan, he began his loss adjusting career in 1972 and was made managing director in 1986 and chairman in 2004 of Crawford and Company. He's an associate of Australasian Institute of Chartered Loss Adjusters, also the resident lecturer at many institutes like AICLA, SCI, GIA. He's also the past president of the Insurance Law Association and Loss Adjuster Association. Lastly, last but not the least, right, Mark Sheldon. He's previously the managing consultant at Hayes, manager at Darwin Rhodes and Eames Consulting Group. Currently, he's here in his capacity as the co-founder of Sheldon, a specialist recruitment consultancy dedicated to the reinsurance markets in Asia Pacific. So today we are leveraging on his expertise and insight when it comes to ageism in recruitment, especially in our industry. So they have many more accolades to them. I could only summarize a very short amount. So if you would like to know more about our speaker's bio, please do just go on Dive In website. Right. So without further ado, let's begin. Right. And I'll start off. Sorry, I'm pretty sure there is a Q&A. So please do join the Slido. There should be a Q&A portion. As we are talking about the guiding questions, you could start inputting all of your Q&A questions to our three panelists here today. So feel free. Any hard-hitting questions or any simple questions would do. Right. So yes, if without further ado, then we'll just begin. Right. First question to the panelists. Do you believe ageism is present in our industry, and how have you seen it play out?
All right, first of all, very happy to be here, and thank you for all of you who braved the rain to be here in person, and also hello to our virtual audience. So I think ageism does prevail in not just the insurance industry, and if I may just to structure the ageism concept into three different categories. One is self-directed, means it comes from internal. The other one is really the interpersonal. You treat somebody with ageism. Of course, lastly is the institutional, right? The company itself or the organization has ageism policies, for example, certain retirement age or certain prejudice against certain ages. So I do think that if we are able to direct our conversations in these three perspectives, it will give us a very good perspective or into what perception we want to talk about for today.
Hi, everyone. If I would have said to you, no, I think that's not accurate. I think ageism is with us without a shadow of doubt. But in the insurance context, ageism varies in intensity. Some companies, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about insurance company brokers and agents or whatever, they are very focused on this aspect. And I give you some example later on. But whereas the others are not as intense in terms of ageism concept. Now, it's pretty extreme. I give you one example. I lecture quite regularly, providing training to Singapore College of Insurance, SI, and so on. I always record that when I walk into the seminar room, I look around. Most I know, like, well, you guys are young people. I was looking for somebody about 40 years old, and not quite much around. Now, I think the concept of ageism is well illustrated. I think it's there in the sense that we send somebody who's much younger to go to learn, and rather than sending somebody who maybe perhaps almost near his lifespan and so on. But it's extreme. But on the other hand, I think we have companies who are really avoiding or helping to defeat this barrier. It's a social issue by actually encouraging the cultural diversity in their workplace, getting the younger folks and the older folks, workers, to come together to work for the mutual benefit and value of the company. So in short, whilst it varies in intensity. Actually, within that limit, there are also variants like in, say, loss adjusting. It's a non-starter. But in certain areas, yes, it is. So I think when we look at it, I think we've got to be pretty objective about it.
From my perspective, then I absolutely do think that ageism is prevalent in the insurance market. We see that on a regular basis when we've got, I suppose, a very privileged window into a lot of hiring processes across the market. We might see candidates who are older that are rejected because the client might say something along the lines of, we're seeking to make a longer term appointment. We might see younger candidates excluded from a process because there's a phrase that might be verbalized along the lines of, we're looking for more knowledge or something like that. All of these would be, I think, unconscious biases, but ultimately I do think it's very, very prevalent in the insurance market.
Thank you so much for sharing. And second question, how do your organizations specifically combat ageism? Do you have any examples or policies? If they have not, you could address why. Or alternatively, you could give us some best practices that you have seen, in other organizations that you wish to implement in yours.
So over in the insurance industry, where SII is concerned, previously we had actually organized mentor and mentee programs to match willing parties who want to come forward to share their experiences. And we are actually surprised that many of the more senior individuals in the markets are actually looking for opportunities to impart their knowledge to the younger ones, right? And that's where we as an institute comes together to bring the professionals across the different functions in the insurance industry, where we kind of match people with similar skill sets, or they could come from different parts of the insurance market, right? So learn more about how they arrive where they are in terms of leadership positions. And of course, I think even from the mentor experience, from what we heard from them, they actually learn a lot from their mentees as well, right? From the different perspective of how the intergenerational view of things, whether is it a misperception or is it a different mindset. I think for both parties in the mentoring program, they actually benefit as well. Right. So I think for mentor-mentee program is one thing that we can definitely look into as a best practice, and also creating intergenerational activities, right? So bring everybody together, not just the young or the old people, but in the industry or company-wise, to ensure that there's a good mix of diverse gender, diverse age, to come together to exchange ideas, to interact with one another.
That's a very good question, I think. So I think speaking in the context of Crawford and Company, now the company has a very defined policy in terms of anti-discrimination. We encourage diversities, cultural diversity. The reason being, as I mentioned just now, I'm in the loss adjusting. the talent among the loss adjusting circle is pretty limited. In effect, Crawford & Company is a worldwide company, encourage the long service employee to continue to be employed in the company because of its scarcity in its resources. All right, and then exactly what Jeanette was talking about in terms of mentoring the up and coming, the next generation of loss adjusters. I started loss adjusting in 1972, that's for 50 years ago. We need to grow. So there is that necessity that somewhat being blocked the sort of the intense barrier of ageism. Crawford is zero tolerance to discrimination in terms of race or culture or gender and so on, because of this special reason. So today you're sitting looking at a real life example. I've served the company for 51 years and they still want me on. Mr. Chan, please stay on. And I'm very grateful because it is important that my presence add value to the organization, not only to the organization itself, but also to the industry at large. So that particular area that you are in, whether you are underwriting, whether you're in claims and so on, to some extent, in my experience, determine the extent, the intensity of the ageism concept. So I think, so I'm very gratified that we are Crawford as a company trying to encourage avoiding this concept of ageism, which we all know can have very adverse effect in the long term. Thank you.
I think if we're looking at it from the context of within Sheldon, our organization, then we've got, I'm confident that we don't have any ageism within the business, but ultimately the team would be the right people to ask about that rather than me. We've got a range of ages between mid-20s and mid-40s, a variety of people doing different roles at different levels across that age range. But where we as an organization do have that very privileged position is when we're talking with hiring entities or our clients on a regular basis about recruitment mandates. And that's where I think we can play a very big role in trying to guide, lead, educate the clients around how to hire in the least discriminatory way possible. That might manifest in a way, for example, of getting a client to verbalize particular knowledge that they need a candidate to have rather than by defining it as years of experience. A lot of clients will commence a job mandate by saying that they need someone with between 5 and 10 years of experience, which clearly puts a very, very narrow window on the sort of individual they're looking at. If our consultants can push back against that and say, let's not think too much about the year's experience that you need, let's think more about what the candidate needs to be able to do on day one, what the candidate needs to be able to do without any additional training, that then still enables you to conduct an accurate search, but without having to focus particularly on the candidate's age or generation.
All right. Thank you so much to the speakers. So I'll cut short the guiding questions because today we were a bit delayed. So, but don't worry, I still have more questions if there's ever allowed. But right now, I would like to hear from the audience. If anyone would like to ask a question, or if you already have a question online, right, which we could address now, but feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to ask your burning question. Right. So firstly, from Deng Yu, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Compared to European markets like the UK, is ageism more of an issue for Asia? So please.
I don't think I can speak very well too much for the European market, but I think in Asia-wise, we do see that the topic ageism is getting more common. So just a show of hands, anybody in the room do not know what's ageism before today? Okay. So I think some of us might not really understand or might not really appreciate the word ageism until we really come face to face with it. So to us, it might sounds like a theoretical word, but in the course of our life, we do see ageism coming to play, whether is it in a trivial matter or a major matter. And to answer that question, I personally do not think that it's more of an Asia thing, because the mindset might be something is related to just the basis of human mankind. right, aging and the younger folks?
I think in terms of what the company can do to promote age diversity, in other words, the young and the old can actually work collective together for a common good of the company. I always like to say that we need two hands to clap, right? So whilst the company policies to retain the older workers, I think it's important that the older workers got to display and got to be committed to their tasks and show that their presence continue to add value to the organization and the beneficial. So that is important. On the other hand, the younger workers got to recognize and not be stereotypes or prejudice the older workers because they are old and they're a bit slow, they are not adaptable and so on. They have to actually look at the mindset that these older workers bring along with them high level of experience and technical know-how gathered throughout the years, and particularly in the insurance line, where over the years the older workers, through the interaction in the market gather, they have regular contacts, they have their own clientele, something, and so on and so forth. They can actually continue to retain this very important link to the company by being present, but at the same time, conduct mentoring. Now, just to share with you in Crawford, the importance of mentoring the next generation cannot be underestimated. I think I got some of my colleagues here, the younger team, and I spent considerable time, and I'm sure many of my Asian colleagues at my level share a lot of the experiences to the younger aspiring loss adjusters who are coming into this industry, sharing with them real life cases, sharing with them problem solving, which they're going to continue to encounter. So I think in order to encourage age diversity, we have to demonstrate two things. Number one, the older workers got to show that there's value added to their presence. And secondly, the younger mindsets got to change. It's an earned respect and earned recognition. So I think it works both ways. It's like a knife, it cut both ways. All right? Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chan. Could you elaborate more on whether ageism is more of an issue in Asia or in Europe? If you have any, or the rest of the world as well. You know, if you have any insights in that.
Okay, again, speaking as an Asian and as a Singaporean, by 2030, 25% of our population will be above 65. It's a problem. Can you imagine out of 4%, one is above 65? And China had just came up with the news that I saw it the other day that they're going to promote extending the retirement age of people because to address the issue of older folks retiring. Japan, certainly, we're all well known in the world that they have a very, very large older folk generation, a proportion of the people. They have a very serious problem. So in relation to that growing number of aged people, the concept of ageism become even more pressing. Because if not arrested, you become a social, economic problem to the nation. So the answer to the question is, yes, I think in Asia, certainly in the coming years, by the 2030s, we can see a very, very large number of aged people among us. It's already a sign there. And Singapore, and that also testified by the fact that the Singapore government is putting up no stops to arrest this problem in our country. So you can see MOM are now coming in to help to not only in terms of arresting ageism, but also promoting in terms of medical and insurance and so on and so forth. So these are all signs and indicators that ageism is here to stay, and it can, if not arrested, will get worse.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chan. for Mark, if you could give us a comparison between, it's okay, between Europe and Asia, if it's more prevalent here or there, because I understand you have international experience.
Certainly do. I think it's difficult to say accurately if it's more of an issue there or not. I think one thing that is certain is that in some more developed markets, there's probably stricter law, regulation, etc., around discriminatory hiring practices, whether that be ageist, sexist, etc. So those markets like the UK are probably a little more evolved in their hiring practices when it comes to having a diverse slate of candidates across multi-generations and so forth. Interestingly, if we do look at the UK specifically, it's probably actually got the opposite problem, where one of the bigger challenges that they're facing is attracting older workers back to the workforce. There's a lot of individuals in the UK who are in their perhaps mid-late 50s who, due to very, very good quality pensions and, you know, living in houses that they bought 30, 40 years ago, have got more than enough money to retire, and that's then almost creating a bit of a drain on the economy. So looking at the UK specifically, they would probably love to be able to get a lot more of the elderly or the older generations back to the workforce, and then obviously sort of contributing to the country again from an income tax and a economy sort of perspective as well. So you know, it goes both ways, I suppose.
All right, thank you so much. And we move on to the next question. We see, okay, so for that question, what are some practical solutions that companies can adopt to promote age diversity? I understand we've already talked about mentorship, we talked about laws, we talked about regulations, we talked about how people can promote more workshops in their own companies, right? So I would skip past that question and move on next to the next one. What are some of the most common misconceptions about older or younger employees that contribute to ageism? So this is a topic that I would like to cover as well, based on my one of the guiding questions, right? Because there's a increasing awareness on the topic of reverse ageism. I'm not sure if you're aware of the terminology. So reverse ageism is discrimination against individuals for being relatively younger. This involves assumptions, stereotypes, or actions that undervalue, undermine, or limit younger individuals. So what are your views on this, and how can we better address this issue? Because I understand from our poll earlier, 50% of you, including the online audience, have stated that you have been rejected from positions either because you're too young or too old. So let's hear from our panelists.
I think one of the important points that we need to look at in terms of the value of the individual who brings to the table instead of looking at the age. So sometimes when we look at the resume, if there is no age limit or there's no age given, based on the profile of the candidate, will we hire the person? I think that's where we want to really bring to the table in terms of looking at the person as who the person is and how he or she will contribute to the organization, rather than because, oh, this person is actually very good, but I don't think we can take the age, right? So I think that's really ageism playing it a big role in terms of who we select to bring to the company or to the team.
I think my response to that question would be yes, there is this area of reverse ageism, and I personally have witnessed dealing with the many claims department. I've actually witnessed opinion expressed by the younger claims team members who've been actually vet to. They say, oh, you know, that's not it's not practical, and so that's the kind of concept that that people may have the prejudice that, look, the younger folk, they lack experience and their opinion doesn't really value. But I like to think the other way around, and I can share with some of my folks here. Issues have been laid out can be heard from different quarters. I mean, I have my own viewpoint in terms of how a matter to be solved. But from the younger perspective, they can actually, in my experience, come up with certain areas, certain angles that we can actually capitalize on that. All right, we cannot profess that we know how to solve every problem, you know. And when I table that to the young team, and I like to say that I learned from some of the ways that they have actually see from another angle of things. So I think it's important that we could empower the young. They're the future. I think to deprive them because they are of their age. All right. Now, looking at the insurance industry, again, I like to table that. Today, unlike the good old days where the industry were run, I'm talking about the old days, were run by unqualified people. It was order of days. It was fine in the 70s, 80s. We have insurance practitioners coming from all walks of life, coming into the industry. And but today, that concept has changed. Insurance industry drawn on a much more higher professional level, and we have qualified, trained technocrats coming into our industry, and many are young. I think if ever we want to revolutionize the industry, I think this is the area that I think we should capitalize on. The younger coming with new concept, new idea, properly trained, and able to handle matters. So I think we should not lose sight of this talent, the resource that we have, just because they're young, their opinion doesn't really matters. I think that is a very negative approach. Yeah.
I think whether it's ageism or whether it's reverse ageism, there's a big irony attached to it, because when you talk to your average leader, when you look at the various surveys that get publicized by various risk managers and so forth, everyone will talk about on an endless basis about how one of their biggest worries is lack of talent. One of the biggest threats to their business is lack of availability of talent. It's usually in one of the top 3 risks that would be cited in some of these risk manager surveys, and it could largely be addressed, if not eradicated, if people were prepared to think a little bit more laterally and a little bit more creatively about how more experienced and more mature talent could be incorporated into an organization, and or if younger, more up and coming, more developing talent could be given an opportunity. So I think whether we're talking ageism or reverse ageism, it's a really strange context that's manifested, because if we can find a way to address it, then it solves one of the biggest risks that leaders tell us that they face.
On the topic of thinking more laterally, since we've talked about reverse ageism, I've seen on the screen that someone would like to ask that we see more programs and courses designed for the young. Are there any planned by SII or any other institutions for more senior members, not just a mentor? So this is specifically for a question for the older generation.
So I think for the institute-wise, we do a series of courses, not just for the young or for the old. We act as a platform to kind of connect individuals from across the insurance market, whether you are agent, broker, loss adjusters, surveyors. And the beauty of it is we have individuals from different generations coming together, right? So mentoring is definitely one of the programs that we look at in terms of bridging both generations. As for the rest of the activities, we do bonding activities together as well, right? And as always, I always say SII is a member institute for the members, right? So if you have any innovative ideas to kind of bridge, playing ball games together, I don't know, going hiking together, feel free to approach us, right? Because we are here to bring all of you all together in the industry, right? So if you have any ideas for activities that we can connect generations together in a more engaging manner, please reach out to us.
I think one of the very powerful approach to encountering ageism is that the older workers got to continue, as I mentioned just now, got to showcase your worth or your value to the company. And I think that can come through by training. Training to that extent that you're plugged into the existing system. All right, you may have gone through 20, 30 years, but the system has changed. I think you could continue learning, I think that's where institutions like SI, SCI can actually comes in to continue to upgrade the understanding of the ever-changing landscape of our industry. They have to, otherwise. Oh, just because I'm sort of, I don't sort of not necessary for me to learn. I think that's wrong. I think that actually emphasize the issue as ageism. All right, because as I said just now, the older workers are being actually looked at in the organization, being watched by the younger folk and see what they can bring to the table, not just a guy sitting there with a space and things like that. So I think in order to do that, you really continuously, and I'm very gratified that I've been a regular trainer, regular lecturers in many of the programs, and I really hope to see a more diverse participant. As I said just now, 3/4 very young people. Fine, I think it's great, but I think we need to entice the older workers to come in, to upgrade themselves, to continue to work in a way that it promote the company in the industry. So I think many of these institutions are doing a good job in continuing training, SCI, and so on and so forth. But again, the mindset, this is a challenge, and also the company, the mindset of the company got to change. Bring on board the older folk, because correspondingly, when they learn, they come back and then they will help to mentor more effective to the local generation. Over time, that will actually blur the impact of ageism. Yeah, that's my humble belief in that.
Yeah, I think Jan's hit the nail on the head with his final point, that it's as much around a mindset shift for the organization as it is around a training gap. If we to sort of take a hypothetical example of a more experienced worker looking to re-enter the workforce in a mid-career role, I would argue that a chief broking officer who's seeking to become a placing broker, a chief underwriting officer who wants to be a property underwriter, a loss adjuster who wants to become a claims handler, et cetera, probably doesn't have a training gap. They've probably got all of the skills that they need. They just need the organization to think a little bit more laterally around bringing that person into a team which has got a diverse range of ages. So it's perhaps more around, a culture of mutual respect and looking at what everyone can bring to the table rather than necessarily a training gap.
Before I move on to the question about flexible work hours, I love it, or I love that question, but any questions from the floor? Oh, yes, okay. For the online or virtual audience.
Hi, I'm Caden. I'm from New Line. I joined New Line as a 1-year underwriter, previously the broker. So I'm just speaking from experience, and also I think the points that you just made on the learning, it's interesting. Reason being because when I first joined the industry, I was told you need at least like 5 years to hone your skills and whatnot. But I think as time goes by, I come to realize that even for my generation and the younger generation, this patience for learning, the timeline has actually shortened a lot. I think in the past, we learned things, not the knowledge, SCI, we read the physical textbook. My time become the e-copy. Right now, from what I understand, people learning, you can just easily put the e-copy and do AI. It summarizes the whole thing for you. So the learning process actually is so much faster and shorter. And I think for organizations, it's more of understanding that how to engage the younger generations is no longer expecting them to wait 5 years for them to reach the next role. I think even more so, we need to think about how we can engage them in a much shorter time, giving them a more, I will say, clearer projection of what is in store for them. I think the lateral point, it's very valid. It's like the opportunities is not just linear. You can actually move across. I think that's what lacking in our industry right now, because when we join, for example, I'm a broker, I only can go broker, be an energy broker and whatnot, so on and so forth. But I don't know that actually there are possibilities of underwriters, be in the finance role and whatsoever. I think that's something as the industry we can look at identifying. that's my personal point of view. I think the question to you guys is, do you see organizations actually trying to recognizing that fact? Because we are all talks about giving more trainings and whatnot, but then do we actually recognize that trainings don't have to be that long anymore? The time frame is actually so much shorter, and the inability to recognize that actually will cause the young talents to be frustrated and leave. Because I've seen many of my peers who have just left the industry because they just they need too long to reach that certain level, which I think they're more than capable enough to. So just what's your views on this over the past few years, whether this has changed? Yeah.
Thanks for the question. Really good one. I think ultimately I would agree with you that there is a tendency for the industry to be very slow in terms of how it trains and develops. I feel there's probably certain aspects where organizations are correct to stick to their guns. You know, if it's a leadership role and they might say that an individual needs to have experienced both a hard market and a soft market, or if it's a particularly specific role where they need to have got experience working in territory A, territory B, territory C, that's not something that just another 6 months or just another 12 months can give you. But if it is a case of moving from underwriting assistant to assistant underwriter to underwriter, or broker to senior broker to broking team leader, etc., there's probably a very strong argument that, you know, if you're good enough, you're old enough. So I think the industry definitely does need to speed up in that regard.
It's a very good question. I think this underlying the development of skilled talents. I think in the insurance context, the so-called training and learning really is determined by the requirement, the qualification requirement. Fundamentally, those who enter the insurance industry, and also there's a requirement also by MAS that they should be suitably qualified. Suitably qualified. So and there's also the criteria for moving up. All right. I mean, if you look at it, anybody aspiring to be a CEO of the company has to have either an ACII or an NCIF qualification. Now, so that provides the time frame. You have to secure that because that's fundamental. Now, alongside will be the training that been propounded by the various institutions to enhance as the candidates progress. The training is actually topical, and like the courses that I conducted are practical in nature and is subject specific. Like, for example, fraud, for example. So it's a subject specific. So you train, the company may say, all right, you're dealing with claims, property claims. I think there's a course SI is doing for fraud. I think we will send you there. But I think sort of addressing your issue in terms of would it take too long in order to reach a certain status? You got to draw the line between the training and the basic qualification. And I think whoever and people coming into the industry, I would strongly recommend that at least in the first 5 years of your attachment to the company, that you at least obtain a very basic insurance qualification. From then on, you will be using it as a springboard for your further training on specific aspect of your work. And I think the company can certainly recognize that. So if you're an underwriter, you got your basic qualification, and where there are issues like lectures on talk on say a risk assessment, you send your people there to enhance their knowledge in that particular field that can actually strengthen their position. Thank you.
I think on the training front, something very close to my heart is the way that we have changed our training approach post-COVID, right? Personally, I've been in the training line for quite a bit, and before COVID, we've been trying very hard to get our agents and partners across the region to adopt to online training. A lot of them actually preferred face-to-face. So when the pandemic happens, all of us had to turn to virtual. So I think that's how change has helped us to adopt technology faster in the way that we expected. And just to address your question, which is very valid, there's a lot of training opportunities for us in our daily lives, not just to go through a 1 hour training process. I believe many of us have attempted the trainings on LinkedIn, which can be a good 2 to 3 minutes. So on this front, I think Mark and Mr. Chan has touched a lot, but I just want to share that all of us should, as whatever positions that we are in the industry or in the company, take time to invest in ourselves, right? Whether to prepare for your current role or prepare for your next role or just prepare for lifelong learning. Spend 2, 3, 4 minutes, go on to a micro site to do some simple learning, subscribe to places where you can get learnings every day that get thrown into your inbox, do a quick 5 minutes read. I will believe that this is very beneficial for us, both in a personal capacity as well as a professional front.
Thank you so much. We might have to cut the Q&A short because we have to go on to our next program. But we can have the very last question because I'm curious about the last question as well. So how should our perspective of flexible work arrangement, work from home, varying work hours, and work performance be adjusted for different generation of workers? Should they be adjusted for different generation of workers? So
My first response when I see the question is, why should it be different from different generations? Because we are on this panel that says, is it too old, too young, or just right? So again, back to where we started, is really about the individual, right? Whether it's a different arrangement that needs to apply for flexible, or whether it's different job nature that allows them to work virtually. But it shouldn't, because this older person needs to work more at home. The younger persons need to come office more. Right, I think that's where we shouldn't be drawing the line, or vice versa, but really based on job nature, case by case, whether the individual needs to be at home to be virtually working, or the individual prefer to come to office to work, right? So it shouldn't be based on, I think, different generations of workers per se by the question.
Yeah, I certainly I do not see why there should be a distinction between older and the younger folk and so on. I think it all depends on the nature of the work that you are in. I mean, for example, as a loss adjusters, I can work anywhere. I mean, I just go from the home, I travel up to Jurong to deal with a big fire, and likewise, correspondingly, I can do it from the office. So I don't think unless you're thinking that special preference goes for the older folk because they are a bit slow a bit. No, I don't think that with increase in health, what I call government promoting health and so on. I think the people older, even very healthy, very strong, very young, what I call energetic, and I don't not think that age plays a part in determining whether one should go from home or the office. No, I don't think that's that to me is concept doesn't matter.
I would agree with them both. If a policy is fit for purpose, then it should apply across all ages and generations.
I would like to challenge that. So take for example, right? Final question. Take for example, say because every single person has different circumstances. Yes. So for example, like expecting mothers, right, will require different work environment, work arrangement. Maybe someone who's younger and more ambitious could work over time. So which is I assume that is the intention behind the question as to why we should look at work arrangement more flexibly instead of just a 9 to 5. Right? Do you agree?
I would challenge that as that's an organizational design sort of perspective rather than necessarily an ageist perspective. And ultimately, those firms who have got the most appropriate and the best policies from a working model standpoint are going to be the ones who win the war for talent, whether that's a graduate trainee or a return to work person sort of towards the end of their career.
Okay, sure. Then thank you so much. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the virtual audience as well. We have to cut this short. Before that, before you go, right, I would like everyone to do like a Slido for a word cloud. But before, okay, maybe I'm just hopping forward. But please, firstly, a warm reception to the panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the online audience as well, right? We would like you to include in the, put 1 to 5 words, let's build a word cloud on what an age inclusive and diverse workforce will be like, right? And as you are doing that, we will award the token of appreciation to our panelists. So please. Do it all at once. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So this concludes the virtual program. So hopefully today we have brought some awareness to ageism, and we have also tackled ways in which organizations can better combat ageism. So hope to see you in other dive-in events as well if you have not registered. Thank you so much for the online audience. For now, for the in-person audience, we'll run into our next program, which we call the all right, this is for the online audience, right? Feedback form, right? Feedback form, I'll give you maybe like 5 seconds, right? But it's okay. You can do the